Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Community Church of Boston in Puerto Rico. I'm joining you remotely from a lovely place. We've had a few wonderful days with our other family, the Armstrong Parks, one of whom just moved here, and we're just having a delightful time. These are singing buddies of mine from 40 years and counting. And we're with their kids, and we're with a couple of wonderful friends, Jennifer and Rebecca, and Georgia Rose, and Jules over there. And we just wanted to light this candle in joy of family and friends. I just turned it off. It's not a real candle. It's a battery candle.
There it is.
And now it's on. The flame is burning. We keep the flame alive, and it's a tiny flame, and it's a still small voice in the wilderness. But we sing it with all we've got, and we start with a song that we all know together. That's about a candle lit in the darkness, in the rain, and it's a song I sing a cappella frequently at this juncture in our meeting. And this time I get to sing it with a bunch of friends. Here's how it goes. If I stood out in the rain night, my only light, a candle a million miles away, would you lay down your fire as I raised mine? Would you not kill again? And oh, when you're near me, oh my love, oh my joy, there's nothing ever to weary me, oh my darling one. If I walked as one of many more, my only time, the present, now and here, would you undo those bombs, one for each step taken, let a future draw near? And oh, when you're near me, oh my love, oh my joy, there's nothing ever to weary me, oh my darling one. Thank you, my sweet friends, Jennifer and Rebecca and Georgia Rose, Armstrong Park, and River in the back, and Nova somewhere back there, and Jules over there. I really am so glad I got to share these lovely folks here in San Juan, Bayamón, Puerto Rico. We've had a lovely time. We'll be back Tuesday. Anyway, just a couple of quick announcements before we turn this wonderful program over to our presenter, both in the form of reflection in song, paintings, recollections. I'll tell you that next Sunday, we have a really wonderful program. Dr. Kelly Carter Jackson is a professor of Africana Studies at Lesley College. Her address is called We Refuse, a Forceful History of Black Resistance. And another really wonderful program coming up, Michael Burawoy, professor of International Relations at UC Berkeley. And he will be joining us live. He's coming from California to be with us for the W.E. Du Bois annual address. And his address is called W.E. Du Bois and the Question of Palestine. Looking forward to that. And sorry I couldn't be with you in person, but this is the next best thing. And I want to just thank Amar for helping make this happen, and just tell you a little tiny bit about Yannah. I've just been impressed with Yannah because of her Palestine activism, and because she is a fellow church music person. She was for a long time the music director and accompanist at First Parish in Jamaica Plain. Reflections in songs, paintings, and recollection. As the daughter of a compassionate humanist and the granddaughter of a righteous Zionist, Yannah will present her multiple perspectives on intergenerational trauma, moral injury, and personal responsibility. She will present her view on how to cherish the blessings of inheritance while discarding and decrying the violence and nearsightedness inherent in a Jewish family's devotion to Zionism. She will also endeavor to show how we must reframe the worlds of psychotherapy and mental health through a social justice lens that acknowledges the damage that Western colonization has on the souls of both the oppressed and the oppressor in the USA and Palestine. Yannah is a self-described polymath. I love that word. I've never heard it or used it. I'll have to look it up, and maybe I'm one of those too, or maybe you are too. A musician, composer, arranger, singer, songwriter, poet, multi-instrumentalist, keyboard, harp, guitar, percussion, essayist, visual artist, board certified music therapist, expressive psychotherapist. She has a private practice out of her home in Roslindale, Massachusetts, and is part of the duo HeartSoulVoice. She holds degrees from Wheaton College, Sarah Lawrence College, and Lesley University, and she's a member of the First Church of UU in Jamaica Plain, where she was the vocal soloist for over 3 decades. She has also worked at Harvard School of Public Health for over 2 decades as a programmer, analyst in environmental health research. She is joined this morning by violinist Joy Grimes. Thank you so much for being with us, Joy. And Yannah, welcome to Community Church, and we hope it's not the last time you're with us, and hopefully soon again in person. Yannah and I have talked about organizing pretty soon a concert for Palestine. Look out for that. I hope we will be able to do that really soon. And Yannah, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Dean. I will just say a few words about my partner, Joy. She is Dr. Joy Grimes. She has a doctorate in musical arts and viola performance. Can you hear me? Okay. So anyway, she has a doctorate in viola performance from Boston University. She also is on the faculty at the Suzuki School of Newton. Okay, a little bit closer. Is that better? Oh, okay, sorry. All right, so besides her doctorate in viola performance, she teaches at the Suzuki School of Newton. I think once was a former president of the Suzuki Association or something like that. In Massachusetts. And she performs also on violin and viola with many orchestras around Massachusetts and New England and sometimes even across the globe, and also plays folk music, Irish music, and along with me is an incredible accompanist, and I consider her an important voice in my own music. And so I'm very glad to have her here with us today. And we're going to start today with first a song called Little by Little Big Changes Are Made, which is based on a quote by Yogi Berra, and some of you are old enough to remember who that is, where he says, you know, big changes can happen with just doing little steps. And then I'll read a poem that's about my mother, and then read a little more, and then we'll have interspersed with what I'm going to say songs and poems and references to artwork. So here we go with Little by Little, Big Changes Are Made. I don't have the power to move the mountain. I don't have the power to move the mountain, but I have the power to carve it up. I have the power to carve it up. I don't have the power to swerve the river. I don't have the power to swerve the river, but I have the power to fill love's cup. I have the power to fill love's cup. And little by little, Little by little, big changes are made. Little by little, big changes are made. I don't have the power to hold back the storm. Don't have the power to hold back the storm, but I have the power to comfort your cry. I have the power to comfort your cry. I don't have the power to soar like a bird. Don't have the power to soar like a bird, but I have the power to sing loud and high. I have the power to sing loud and high. And little by little, big changes are made. Little by little, big changes are made. I don't have the power to make the sunshine. Don't have the power to make the sunshine, but I have the power to sow a seed. I have the power to sow a seed. I don't have the power to make the rain fall. Don't have the power to make the rain fall, but I have the power to meet a need. I have the power to meet a need. Gonna carve a path where my steps must go. Gonna fill my cup so love can overflow. Gonna hold your hand as we walk along. Gonna sing with you till our voices grow strong. Gonna sow the seeds each night and morn. Gonna water them so love is reborn. I may not have the power of might, but I have the power to know what is right. And little by little, big changes are made. Little by little, big changes are made. All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I'm going to read a poem, and this is based on a very true story. My mother, whom you'll hear a lot more about, planted a seed in me, and you will hear this story right now. My mother planted a seed in me that grows shoes within which I plant myself. The shoes are magic. When I step inside them, I see through others' eyes. On a hot July day, when I was a teenager in 1972, as we waited for a friend to collect a welfare check at the government building in downtown Boston, my mother lent her sandals to a young hippie man. As we sat on the cement bench, he approached us saying, "Hey, can anyone here lend me their shoes? I need to get my check, but they won't let me in with no shoes on." He was tall and lanky, with waist-length straight and straggly brown hair. His bell-bottom jeans were a discolored gray, and his worn shirt was open, showing his hairless chest. His bare feet looked dusty on the hot pavement. He seemed perhaps a little stoned, with a genial grin and a laughing mouth. I did not know why he needed a welfare check. Perhaps he was an unemployed Vietnam veteran, or a young man just down on his luck. Or maybe it was his girlfriend's check. I will never know. Despite his feet being twice as long as hers, the summer shoes were successful, and he was able to get inside. When he returned the flip-flops to my mother, he said, "Thank you, I got my check." And she said, "You're welcome, glad to help." My mother is the only one I've ever known to give the shoes off her feet to a stranger. I wonder now if she felt the warmth of his large feet as an imprint on those rubber thongs, whether she knew then what it was truly like to stand in another's shoes, even though the shoes were her own and only briefly his. When we let them sink in, such seeds become the flower of compassion. Thank you so much. And maybe I'll come and sit back on the harp, and I'm going to do a little bit of reading some commentary. So, let's see, let's check. Amar, is the mic on? Okay, wonderful. So I'm a musician, an artist, a poet, a therapist, all of those things that Dean said. I'm also a group leader for self-compassion groups for First Aid of the Soul for Ukraine, and a movement chaplain for If Not Now. And most importantly, I am an anti-Zionist Jew. I'm here today to tell the story of personal awakenings to the truths that slowly get revealed during the passage of time. Involved in those revelations are the concepts of intergenerational trauma, moral injury, personal responsibility, and a little bit of my family's history as I understand it, and how that has affected me, my family, and in many ways, the whole world, and very specifically, Palestine. And I'm also here to share with you my expressive responses to these occurrences. My Jewish ancestors came from Poland and Ukraine. My great-grandparents were city people, shopkeepers and merchants. My grandfather's family came from Suwałki, Poland, of which is stated a place where the Jewish community was able to establish a hospital, raise money for the Jewish hospital in Warsaw, and had several schools, including one for girls. Quote, "The Jewish community of Suwałki and vicinity was very intensely involved in the Zionism movement. Beginning in the second half of the 19th century and thereafter, quite a large number of Jewish inhabitants immigrated to Palestine." Avraham Stern, the leader of the very well-known Lohamai Harut Israel, commonly referred to as the Stern Gang, who fought for the independence of Palestine to become the Jewish state of Israel, was born and raised in Suwałki. And it is Stern's group that blew up the King David Hotel in the 1930s, one of many terrorist acts by early Zionist pioneers. In any case, in the period between the two world wars, the Jewish community had gained in importance on the level of commerce, manufacturing, and education. In other words, it was a very middle-class Jewish community with people who made a good living. My grandmother's parents, though, emigrated from Bielec Tserkva, which means white church. It's a town 50 miles south of Kyiv. This city had a large Jewish population and was a center of Jewish arts in both Yiddish and Ukrainian. And Zionism was also encouraged there. By interesting happenstance, I found out it was also the birthplace of Solomon Nomovich Rabinovich, who used the pen name Sholem Aleichem. He was a poet and author who wrote in Yiddish, and it's from his tales of Tevye the Dairyman, which we derived Fiddler on the Roof. My mother was Rita Miriam Radovsky, born September 11th, 1912, the third child of David and Minnie's 11 children. David Reuben Radovsky, my grandfather, and Esther Minnie. He was born in 1880, she in 1887, and they raised their children in Fall River, all 11 of them who grew up after getting married in 1909. In every family, each person has their own perspective on what that family is and where they fit in it. During the 18 years that my mother was in my life, for she died at 62 in my first year of college, she had often told me she was the black sheep of her family, disapproved of by her parents, often scolded by the family's Irish Catholic governess. And yet, she and her older sister were privileged to go to Wheaton College in Norton, Mass. in the late 20s. My mother's closest siblings often told me after her death in 74 that of all the 11 children, she was the most intellectual and intelligent. But being in the 1920s, she didn't join the ranks of doctors, lawyers, and scientists that were the careers of my uncles. She worked in administration and as a copywriter and married late at 32 in 1945 to my father, Paul, a German Czech American from the Midwest. My two older siblings were born in the 40s, and I came along in the late 50s when she was already 43. Rita was a voracious learner until almost literally her dying day. My parents met while both worked at Harvard's underwater sound lab during World War II. He was a sonar engineer, she the newsletter editor and secretary to the department. I have their United States commendations for this war work. Now, her marriage was 14 years after my grandfather's death, and 25 years, he died 25 years before I was born. But I do doubt that my grandmother was happy with my mother marrying a German Czech Gentile, and that was always the impression I got. 30 years after my mother's death, my Uncle Saul, her closest brother, told me that my grandfather punished her the most severely of all the children, both verbally and physically. I believe it was this treatment by my grandfather that encouraged her to totally abandon the religion of Judaism and to become a feminist, despite being mainly a wife and mother half of her too short life. At age 47, when I learned that about my mother, I wasn't even a therapist yet, but I knew that that abuse was what traumatized and humiliated her and created her own difficulties with depression and anger. Despite that, however, she fostered all her children's creative pursuits, but her anger and perfectionism drove my sister and myself away from the house, each of us at age 16, although reconciliation certainly happened. I also often say that everything about how not to parent, I learned from how I was parented, and I'm grateful for the concepts of child-centered mothering that helped me overcome those negativities. But my mother, as you heard in the poem, taught us the meaning of compassion, altruism, and how the arts give us so much beauty and comfort in this difficult world, and how we all need to care about what happens to the underdog, to those oppressed, to those wounded by the hubris of Western capitalism. When I was 9 years old, my mother took our family to Washington, D.C. for my very first peace march against the Vietnam War. I went to others with her in my early teens as well. And those of you present here today will see this artwork in person, but now Amara can put on screen these two amazing drawings that my mother did that she had printed and handed out at the DC marches. The first is the Napalm Madonna, and the other is If You Destroy Every Hamlet. Today, when I see, I wear a button on my backpack, which is of the Palestinian mother who is holding her child, her dead child, close to her. And it reminds me so much of this Napalm Madonna. And if you destroy every hamlet, the words on it say, Joy, can you read those? Can you? Can't see them from here. I'm just going to get up and look at it. if you destroy every hamlet, a generation will still arise that will evict you. So think about that, what happened in Vietnam and what is happening in Palestine now. So now we have another song, and two songs, and one at the piano and one at the harp, so I'm going to go back to the piano. This next song is called Yesterday's Dream, which is, so after getting that word from my uncle, several years later I realized I could finally write the song that I needed to write about my mother. So yesterday's dream. Now, yesterday and long ago and today, those are actual people in that the song is referring to. I am yesterday, my mother was long ago, and my daughter is today. Just a little, you'll get it from what we're going to do. In the backyard of yesterday's dreams, knowing she's powerful and could never die, Supergirl soars from one rock to another, thinking, I can do anything and I can fly, for she's just a little child. For she's just a little child. Long ago child cried at others' pain, spoke out loud about things unseen, a loud voice and a hard hand silenced the wondering and damned in the dream. Yet she's just a little child. Yet she's just a little child. Long ago a mother falls from a broken tree. Long ago mother speaks in kisses and screams. But yesterday's child finally gets to be free. For long ago mother fosters yesterday's dreams, for she's just a little child. For she's just a little child. My visions take me to worlds in the stars. My arms carry me as a winged lioness. My voice commands both villains and victors. Villains and victors. I can do anything, and I can fly, 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 and I'm just a little child who's become Poetry of the heart is a gentle beat for my own baby. No hurt, no dread. Poetry of the heart is a smile so sweet, for she's just a little child. For she is just a little child. Today's child has justified visions, speaks of healing the scratches from screams, a soft voice and a tender touch, welcomes her wanderings and delights in her dreams, for she is just a little child. She's just a little child. In the backyard of yesterday's dreams, knowing she's powerful and could never die, Supergirl soars from one rock to another, thinking, I can do anything and I can fly, for she's just a little child. 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 Thank you. Wrong side. So this next piece is called Absurdity. And I wrote this during the first Trump administration. But it's based on a quote by Camus. And the quote is this: I draw from the absurd 3 consequences, which are my revolt, my freedom, and my passion. And there is no love of life without despair of life. So this song speaks to those themes. Outside my window and I see the rain. I look outside my window and I see the rain. But for the rain, there wouldn't be the flower. But for the rain, there wouldn't be the flower. How absurd, how absurd, how absurd, how absurd. No love without despair, no mend without a tear, no freedom without a scar, just passion goes far. I look across the sky and I see the clouds. I look across the sky and I see the clouds. But for the clouds, there wouldn't be the rainbow. But for the clouds, there wouldn't be the rainbow. How absurd, how absurd, how absurd, how absurd. No love without despair, no men without a tear, no freedom without a scar. Just passion goes far. I look inside my heart and I see the pain. I look inside my heart and I see the pain. But for the pain, no joy in a blue sky. But for the pain, no joy in a blue sky. How absurd, how absurd, how absurd, how absurd. In a dream spoken freely is the chance. Beneath an ever-changing sky is a dream in my eye. I speak a truth and my dream learns to dance. I sing a truth and my dream learns to fly. Outside my window and I see the rain. I look outside my window and I see the rain. But for the rain, there wouldn't be the flower. But for the rain, there wouldn't be the flower. How absurd, how absurd, how absurd. How absurd. No love without despair, no mend without a tear, no freedom without a scar. Just passion goes far. Absurdity. So now I'm going to ask Amar to put up on screen. There's a painting called Chaos and Pain. And you can see I sort of wrote that in a rather depressed moment. It was before this latest thing with Palestine that was happening. But during all the times of the protests for Black Lives Matter, and these figures emerged that are kind of floating in a kind of a sea of depression. That's basically what I think of that. And the next image is the 2x2 triptych. Not that one. It's 6 little pictures side by side. Nope. Well, it might be out of order, but the 2x2 triptychs are 6 little miniature paintings that are a response to emotions that emerge, at the end of the day when I would be checking my Instagram and seeing everything during the last year and a half almost, emotional responses. And one of the little pictures says oppression, blood, rage. And it's these very dark colors. So in any case, I'm going to read you a little bit more about my exploration into learning about Palestine before we do some more music. And if Amar finds that painting, it would be great to have it up on screen. Ah, wonderful. Yeah, there we go. So, and the last question, of course, is why? Why? We'll get to the question of why later. Here's my first recollection of learning about Palestine. My husband, an Irish American, gave me a lovely purple embroidered keffiyeh when we were dating in the late 70s. It now belongs to my adult daughter. I had no real awareness of Palestine until he gave me that scarf and explained in brief about the Palestinian struggle against their occupiers. My husband had also visited Ireland and Northern Ireland many times and knew of the troubles there and how Britain had made Ireland its first colony that it exploited and starved, just as the British Empire, the Zionists, and Israel have been exploiting Palestine for well over 100 years now. But it wasn't until around 2005 when an anti-Zionist Jewish colleague at Harvard gave me some literature from B'Tselem and asked me to help distribute a BDS petition around my campus in the medical area, that I began to understand the horror of occupation in Palestine. I learned about the bulldozer death of Rachel Corrie, and I began to educate myself with books by Mazin Kumsia, who has spoken here, and others. Our BDS campaign wasn't successful, obviously, and I got some flack from an Israeli postdoc fellow who walked by my office one day and saw the petition outside my door. Years later, after leaving Harvard and while attending Lesley University for my studies in expressive therapy, I was offered an internship with ArtsBridge Institute. It's a Massachusetts nonprofit that brings together Palestinian and Israeli and American teenagers to inspire interconnection through postmodern dialogue processes and art making via visual art or film. This was eye-opening for me and was where I learned about Neve Shalom, the town founded by Jews and Palestinians to promote coexistence in occupied Palestine. I formed connections with these young people, but those few with whom I'm still connected are the Palestinians, now adults in their late 20s, and some in their early 30s. After I graduated from Lesley, in 2014, Israel launched in July Operation Protective Edge. This following song, poem and song that I will be singing are a response, and they began in a small way to make my voice heard among my friendship circles that I did not support Israel's actions. And to explaining the song, which comes after this, it's called Provocation Response. There's a little role play in drama therapy called No You Can't, But I Want To. And it's a little game that teaches us about the tone of provocation and how that directly corresponds to the tone of the response. So if I say, no you can't, but I want to. No you can't, but I want to. There's a little demonstration. So I'm going to read you first this poem called Turnabout. And this is from, there's a preamble to this poem, which I wrote July 23rd, 2014. The world right now, as it ever was, with Israel killing Palestinians, and those oppressed rising up with arms because nonviolent resistance has been tried and was a failure. Yet the whole issue is wrapped up in one side denying the other's humanity, and one side with all the power denying the right of self-determination, the right to self-govern, and the right to be considered equal with full privileges. I believe that we are all human beings before we are any other thing. Turnabout. Some think there is true left. Some think there is true right. Some think there is true wrong, counteracted only by might. Fate gives some a twist when an ally brings a fist, but such a turn with strife may bring a turnabout in life. Look behind the gun, the fist, the knife. You will see countless generations rife with toothless gums and blinded eyes, with children's cries and mothers' sighs, with peoples misused and women jeered, by private privilege abused or country's coin revered. When any one of us strips another of their spirit's power, ugly destruction lies in the pain of a weapon's shower. Restoration's beauty lies in the promise of forgiving, and in allowing those different, those wounded, those troubled, the loveliness of living. Now I have to take a moment to do a little tuning with my levers, because this is in a very different key. And so what I'm doing is these levers either sharpen or make it natural. And let's just check this. Middle Eastern. This is in a Middle Eastern mode that I learned from a local oud player, Nabil Atta. I once did a fundraiser with him for Artsbridge, and we played harp and oud together. So, provocation, response. Provocation, response. Provocation, response. Provocation, response. If you shout at me and I shout back, your ears will only hear the screaming. If you shout at me and I reply in softness, your ears could begin to hear the meaning. But only if you're willing to listen. You and I are human beings. We both bleed red. We both cry blue. Side by side, we are equals. In a mirror, my image is you. If I cage you into a corner, would you not cry out in anguish? If I burnt you with an iron fist, would you not strike out in fear? So when will you decide to hear? An eye for 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 an eye, and we are all sightless. A tooth for 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 a tooth, and we are all starving. A yell is as good as a kick. A shout is as good as a punch. A whisper is as good as a handshake. And a song is as good as an opening mind. Shh, listen. Shh, listen. Shh, listen. Shh, listen. Thank you. Thank you. All right, a few more words and then a lot of poems and artwork. Over the years, as other incursions into Gaza or the West Bank happened, I would post pro-Palestinian content online to raise awareness. Terry Burke, now deceased former minister at First Church in JP, went on trips to Palestine with his dear college friend and roommate, Chris Hedges, whom you may know as the journalist who's been to Gaza many times and written many books about war and human rights. But unfortunately, Terry never organized a delegation from our church. And now we come to 10/7/2023. On October 8th, I wrote a letter to Secretary Blinken urging him to urge Israel to show restraint. Well, we know how that went. But after sharing the content of the letter to my family's private group page on Facebook, the response was rather lukewarm and in some ways hostile. Please don't post political content. Our grandfather must be turning over in his grave. There is no apartheid in Israel, says my second cousin who now lives in Jerusalem after making Aliyah in 2021, where he says he lives happily in his apartment with a bomb bunker. Another cousin, a liberal Zionist, said to me in 2024, why don't they all just move to Jordan? So here's a poem called Insurgency. It's rather long. And if Amar wants to put up the artwork Primeval or Prime Evil, that would be perfectly fine. Insurgency. Vietnam, Palestine, Ireland, South Africa, the first peoples of all the Americas, the first peoples of Pacifica, the first peoples down under, and so many others. We label the natives terrorists when they are insurgents, which is those who rise up, those who surge up, intifada, uprising, in urgency, taking agency. My Zionist family members ask, but what about Hamas? Or do you hate Hamas or do you just hate Israel? As if hating insurgents is some badge of honor, as if loving a fascist Israel would be in some way an honoring of my Jewishness. My Jewishness is honored only by standing up for humanity, even when that humanity is not my kin. My Jewishness is honored only by engaging with empathy and compassion, tikkun olam. My Jewishness is honored only by saying, never again for anyone. My Jewishness is honored only by acknowledging that I'm only one part of a puzzle of peoples who populate this planet. The more that oppressors burn the puzzle pieces, the more we all become less than our true possibilities. Israel as a construct is a puzzle of people with huge burnt pieces, charred and scarred by the fires of greed and oppression, covered over with false pine that tries to obliterate the evidence of millennia-old villages. Here, imagine some pictures. Indoctrinated Israeli school children rejoicing at the future their heads are being filled with. And what will you be when you grow up? A soldier, and I will kill all the Arabs. or a settler in the West Bank dropping chemicals and dog poop into Palestinian wells, or a Zionist terrorist named Kaplan in 1948 who poisons wells with diphtheria and typhus, or an IOF soldier breaking the arm of a Palestinian 12-year-old while dragging the child to illegal detainment, solitary, and sexual abuse. And yes, here are dead young people at Nova, killed by insurgents, but also by Israel's Hannibal doctrine. Or here is my American Jewish Aliyah elder cousin, given a false birthright, living in his retiree apartment with a bomb bunker because Israel's brutality creates a resistance that will randomly send a jerry-rigged bomb anywhere it can to deter the oppressor. Only someone with an occupier's power could build a safe room or a walled community to protect them from the dehumanized and disenfranchised bad operators. It is true that the anger of the oppressed is not a pretty thing, but a harrowing cry of utter exhaustion and perseverance spat out as the last resort of trying to ensure survival by overthrowing the devouring giant, the Goliath, who refuses to see the threads of human connection and devours its own siblings. Here are more pictures. Gazan children, burnt and trembling in shock, or arms or legs or brains missing, or gray with death and dried blood, or a 2-pound preemie breathless in an incubator when power was shut off, or Gazan women pregnant with possibility, but then sniped and bulldozed into oblivion, with the future of their people obliterated by some 20-year-old IOF soldier who thinks it's a game of whack-a-mole, or a Gazan woman holding a prize diploma in medicine, but with no hospital to heal the sick, or a Gazan man, perhaps priest or professor or poet, obliterated with his whole family, lest the wisdom and knowledge of being Palestinian be passed into posterity. And this land will never be whole until it is free from the grasping hands of Western greed. And this land will never be whole until it is a democracy for all, Palestinian or Jew, brown or black or white, worshiping as Christian or Jewish or Muslim, or following no faith at all. And this land will never be whole until from the river to the sea, it is a Palestine that is free. It's hard to read that. But I have another poem now. Let's see. If I don't know what's been on the screen, there's other artwork called Distressed Cityscape, which has all the Palestinian flag colors but looks rather forlorn. And another one, I think what's up there is called When the Skin is Burnt. And that was a painting I did imagining healing from burns after being bombed. So now I'm reading another poem called Street Scenes in a Time of Chaos, Vignettes of Loss. And currently this poem is on display with the artwork that inspired it at the Menino Art Center through the Hyde Park Art Association. And Phyllis Bloom, a local artist, painted this picture that inspired this poem, and I believe you will see the picture in your mind's eye as I read it. Street scenes in a time of chaos, vignettes of loss. In the night, lantern-lit windows shine onto streets and well-worn paths. Stories emerge. 1. She and her child have come home in the dark of night to her family, refugees in a foreign land. Tears of welcome, arms of warmth greet them. She and her child had been prey in a dangerous land full of horror and fire and death. They are the lucky ones who escaped. They will live to tell their stories, to sing the songs of their ancients, to beat the drums of truth-telling when the time is right. Their bodies may seem whole, unscathed, but their souls will be in grief and turmoil and fear for many moons of time. Scene 2. 2 sisters meditate upon an ancient key. This key unlocks their family's centuries-old door, perhaps weathered by time and war. But the welcoming door exists in another time, another place. And that door might now be the residence of the thief who stole the house. Or the door may not even exist after so many moons, after so many seasons of fear and flight. Will they ever be able to return? Scene 3. A man reaches up his arms in supplication. He mourns his love, though she is right there before him. She is wounded, dying, and her face looks to the night sky. She knows she is soon to be leaving her body to rise to the sanctity of the stars. She feels the pull of light on the path to the beyond, which we, still living, can never perceive. He also knows her soul shall live on, that she will always be with him, even if just in his mind's eye, and as a strain of melody in his beating heart. A forlorn future awaits. He may not survive either, and who will mourn him if he dies? He is the last of his family to be alive. Scene 4. Someone stands alone, his family's home and belongings burning before him. He wonders with streaming tears and a heavy heart, how could I lose that which I built with my own hands? Why did they destroy what was so beautiful, so much a part of this place? Will he walk away from this destruction, or will he turn and fight, one man against an oppressor of immense power, whose eye lacks a soul? Epilogue. Why? We ask ourselves that question, and there will be no good answer, for the only useful question is, what shall be humanity's answer when asked to witness, to save, to mourn, and to heal? Thank you. Thank you. Trust me, I will let you leave here today feeling a little more hopeful. I wanted to say a little bit more about the journey of discovery regarding my grandfather and his work as a Zionist. So I did not know until this last year the extent of my grandfather's devotion to Zionism. And I became aware that I needed to find out more when a cousin of mine went down to the temple within which my mother grew up in Fall River, Temple Beth El. And there is a giant plaque on the wall, a posthumous plaque to my grandfather, which praises his work as a staunch Zionist. So it's right there in bronze. And it has his profile. I have a picture with a photograph of him with that same profile in my home. And I've had that picture since long before I knew about his work as a Zionist. He was the chapter director for the ZOA, Zionist Organization of America, in both Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And he went to Palestine twice, but also made 3 trips overseas to procure funding and manufacturers for what he calls in the letters to my grandmother, which were typed up by, I guess, one of my aunts or uncles, as the project and meeting our prospects. He doesn't say what the project is, and but he mentions many names, including Fishman. I believe Fishman was Jacob Fishman, who was a Yiddish-speaking journalist who eventually settled in Palestine before it became Israel. And he also mentions Sachs, but I'm not sure which Sachs. And he mentions Stone and Kaplan, Nathan Kaplan, who was a Chicago Zionist who did move to Palestine in the late 20s in 1927. And on these trips, they go to manufacturers and trying to get the best price on having something made, but I don't know what it is they're making. My conjecture is for factories. And he also mentions Nathan Strauss. Now, you might not know the name Nathan Strauss, but he was a German Jew who immigrated with his family to first Pennsylvania and then Georgia in the 1850s, so antebellum South. And he later, after the Civil War, went to New York and founded Macy's. So again, people who were merchants and, in Georgia, what they would do is they had something like hardware stores and manufacturing things, and they would sell them to the plantation owners. And supposedly the Strauss family also had slaves. I recently found a statistic that 83% of Jews who lived in the South before the Civil War owned slaves. Not as many as a plantation owner, because they couldn't own that much land. And also many of those Jewish sons joined the Confederacy or supported the Confederacy. And Nathan Strauss later paid for a statue of a Confederate general who worked to prevent anti-Semitism in the antebellum South. The ironies of all this are it just blows my mind. I'd never thought of Jews in the South having slaves. But they were white people after all. So Nathan comes to New York and he makes a lot of money, and he goes to Palestine and builds factories, and so the Jewish immigrants from Europe have a place to go and work. Not the rich Jews, but the poorer Jews. So, and when I look at I Googled and found minutes of the ZOA online, and these men raised millions of dollars from many, many white donors, some of whom did then move to Palestine. And another person on one of these trips with my grandfather was Weizmann. He only mentions his last name, but I'm pretty sure it's Chaim Weizmann, the first president of Israel. So, needless to say, to emotionally process this kind of news as a person raised by a compassionate mother is very challenging. And one other thing that I want to say, a few very quick things, and then we'll do some more music, and we'll be ending our program soon. Of course, in the letters, some of it is a profession of love to my grandmother, who was back at home with the children. And by his last trip, I believe the 11th had already been born. My mother was 14. And he describes, going to various places, going to Jewish villages, and probably those were the Arab Jews already present in Palestine, but also observing what he calls the Mohammedans, or the Arabs, going into observing a Muslim who stops for one of those times during the day when they need to pray. And instead of just saying, this person is doing his prayers in the prostrate position, he says, he gets prostrate and he mumbles something. And what I perceive from these comments is a kind of disdain for people who are brown, people who are different, people who don't worship the same. It's not unexpected for this time in history, but it's very hard to read. And what I imagine is that when he comes home, and my mother at this point, being a teenager who questions everything, was this something they argued about? But I will never know. All I know is that she completely rejected the religion and became a humanist. And later in her years, she even invented a holiday at Christmas time called Humanismus. So I guess in some ways I celebrate that at the winter holidays. I did promise to talk a little bit about moral injury. So when I say finding out these things about my grandfather, a moral injury is when either someone in your family does something so awful that you also feel a sense of shame around it, or when you've done something awful and you feel a sense of shame around it. And I know there are Israeli former IOF soldiers who have left and who are now anti-war and are trying to change the system, but that will be a lot of work. But another moral injury, I literally equate knowing this about my grandfather as if I were a German child learning that my grandfather had been in the SS and was a Nazi. That's how strong I feel this. But another thing that's occurred over these times in the last year and a half is I'm in a large therapy community, and there are many therapists who are, I guess you could say, are liberal Zionists. And within our various connections of circles of therapists, when one of my younger colleagues asked, where can I send someone to a group to process their grief over the genocide in Palestine? And everyone leapt down her throat who supported Israel. There was no compassion, there was no empathy. And when I say decolonizing the world of therapy, it's not just for Palestine, it's for people, any people of color, for any people with a difference. And our therapy community is overseen by groups like the American Psychological Association, who only in the last week made a statement about Palestine. And that tells you the disconnect that is happening in a field that is about healing. So those are those recollections. I could read from my grandfather's letters, but I don't think I need to. And but I'm always happy to answer questions afterwards. So this next piece, we have two more pieces of music, one more poem, and so if, let's see, Amar, put any artwork up. Just put anything up, whatever you can find. Put them all up and leave them up there a few seconds. They're all important. So this next piece is called Miriam's Waltz, and it's a little set called, it's an instrumental piece called Miriam's Waltz. That was my mother's middle name. And 21st Century Golem. A golem is, in Jewish lore, it is a person made of mud, breathed into life by planting the word life on their chest and saying some prayers. Usually in the lore, it's a rabbi that does that. The most famous lore of the golem is in the city of Prague, where supposedly Rabbi Lov raised a golem and saved the ghetto from destruction by the Prince of Prague. But I imagine that we as a people can be the golem working together with our hearts beating. So let's see. Just want to check these Fs. Cold day today, and these strings are being a little funky. something's not quite right here. Sorry. There we go. What will you be made of? Mud, blood, breath, and bone. What shall we name you? Golem of those not alone. We reclaim the rule of the people, by the people, for the people. We reclaim the freedom of all people, besieged and oppressed by concrete peoples. For we are the golem of truth, the golem of truth. What will be your truth to reveal the poison inside? What shall be your weapon, pen in hand, votes not denied? We work always together, voices rising in harmony. We press truth into paper, for supremacy's the enemy. For we are the golem of truth, the golem of truth. What will you be made of? Mud, blood, breath, and bone. What shall we name you? Golem of those not alone. We reclaim the rule of the people, by the people, for the people. We reclaim the freedom of all peoples, besieged and oppressed by conquering peoples. For we are the golem of truth, the golem of truth. bodies marching to many beats. We sing compassion and reverence for humanity's many feet. For we are the golem of truth, the golem of truth. What will you be made of? What the breath and bone? What shall we name you? Golem of those not alone. Reclaim the rule of the people, by the people, for the people. Reclaim the freedom of all peoples. Beseech and oppress by conquering peoples. For we are the golem of truth, the golem of truth. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to read the last poem. This is called Determination. And this is kind of recognizing that all of us here, the only way you can make change is to do it with other people. And to find those people who can work with you in whatever fashion you want to do that. There's a whole circle of roles that people can take part in social justice. And if Amar could find possibly the picture of Grandmother Olive Tree and then Earth Mother. The Grandmother Olive Tree is a painting I did last summer because I really despair at the constant loss of olive groves and this amazing culture of olive growing and olive trees and the destruction that Israel makes to that landscape because the people of Palestine are connected to that landscape. They know how to be. They don't live on the land, they live with the land. And that is the lesson that we all must take. And oh yes, and it's in the Palestinian flag colors. And the last painting is called Earth Mother Puts the Wind into Motion. And I kind of feel like, you know, even war is connected to climate change. And so Earth Mother is making a big racket, and she wants us to listen. And so there she is. So I'm going to read Determination, and our last piece and ending, and hopefully you'll get to even sing along if you want. This poem's called Determination, and the last song is Rise Again. Determination. Braving the new world, you feel an unbearable, unnameable fear, shaped by gray twists of smoke and red tendrils of fire, clouded in your brain's muted blue morning, as if free-falling in a bad dream from which you wake, startled by the flailing of your limbs, as if pushed off a precipice into dark, roiling waters, whirlpooling into a deep abyss. But you say to yourself, I have been here before. I have awoken the next morning, a survivor of the bad dream, and I have put on my shoes, tied the laces with determination, walked with boldness out into the street in the glaring light of day, exposed, but refusing to be vanquished in vulnerability, for nothing is ever made manifest without risk. And you say to yourself, I have a mouth which has a voice, which has a heart, which has a soul, which has a passion, which has a mind, which has a hand, which has a grasp, which finds a pen, which writes the words or makes the marks which say, I shall not be silenced. And I say to you, let us stand side by side and clap thunder to the dark clouds of despair and sing high the chant of true humanity. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to teach you this chorus. It's maybe not the easiest chorus, but you only have to sing on one note, so maybe that's good. And so the chorus goes like this, and I'll teach you one line at a time. The goodness of humanity will shine a welcome light. Repeat after me. The goodness of humanity will shine a welcome light. With an open door in every coldest, deepest, darkest night. With an open door in every coldest, deepest, darkest night. With voices chanting every truth 10 to the power of 10. With voices chanting every truth 10 to the power of 10. And hearts with boundless love will surely rise again. And hearts with boundless love will surely rise again. Rise again, rise again, rise again. Rise again, rise again, rise again. We'll sing the chorus all together. The goodness of humanity will shine a welcome light. With an open door in every coldest, deepest, darkest night. With voices chanting every truth 10 to the power of 10. With hearts with boundless love will surely rise again. Rise again, rise again, rise again. Rise again, rise again, rise again. We despair at every horror, every lie and every scandal. We hold on by a single thread or by a greasy handle. We think we've heard it all until we hear what's worse once more. Until we feel we're falling as if right through the floor. But listen through the static and you will hear a song. Take a breath and catch the note and start to sing along. Oh, the goodness of humanity will shine a welcome light. With an open door in every coldest, deepest, darkest night. With voices chanting every truth 10 to the power of 10. And hearts with boundless love will surely rise again. Rise again, rise again, rise again. Rise again, rise again, rise again. Close your eyes and open your ears to hear an insistent sound. A persistent swelling chorus with an echo coming round. And every note that sounded like the ringing of a bell. Crowds of people proclaiming that we have truth to tell. Oh, listen through the static and you will hear a song. Take a breath, catch the note and start to sing along. Oh, the goodness of humanity will shine a welcome light. With an open door in every coldest, deepest, darkest night. With voices chanting every truth 10 to the power of 10. And hearts with boundless love will surely rise again. Rise again, rise again, rise again. Rise again, rise again, rise again. Weary feet in victory will walk soft where meanest tread. The shelter for the hapless will make up another bed. Oh, the harbor for the stranger will open up its gate, and souls with wounded hope will overthrow the hate. Oh, listen through the static and you will hear a song. Take a breath, catch the note and start to sing along. Oh, the goodness of humanity will shine a welcome light, with an open door in every coldest, deepest, darkest night, with voices chanting every truth into the power of 10, and hearts with boundless love will surely rise again, 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 rise again. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here today, and thank you to Dean and Amar and everyone here who's come in person, and everyone on Zoom, and everyone on YouTube. Yannah Maria Fröhlich and Joy Grimes, and we are HeartSoulVoice.
Thank you in the name of, is this on? It doesn't sound like. Hello, hello.
Hello. You can sit at the harp if you want.
Yeah, I'll sit over here. Testing. Okay, there we go. Yeah. Okay, my name is Charlie Welch, and I wanted to thank you for Community Church. I'm the treasurer of Community Church, and I have a couple of short announcements right before we go into a question and answer period. The first one is rather routine. It's a monthly announcement that we have the Community Church and Encuentro Cinco sponsor a monthly Peña. It's a Latin American open mic every second Saturday of the month, and the first Saturday was yesterday, so the second Saturday is creeping up fast. So it'll be next Saturday, 7 o'clock to 10-ish, and it's an open mic. It's for not only musical performances, but poetry and spoken word and anything you want to present to an accepting group of people. And you're all invited. Then the other announcement is sort of fallout. 2 weeks ago, my fiance, Joan Livingston, passed away.
Oh.
And I did a little bit of a thing about her the Sunday after that, and that's on YouTube, and I won't repeat that. But what I will happy to announce is that her sister, in Joan's honor, is supposedly going to be coming by tomorrow with a check for $100,000 in her name for Community Church. And although the check is not, there's no restrictions on it, I was going to personally propose that part of that money go to a regular yearly award. Joan was an avid follower of journalism, and she was looking for the most independent journalist, and I was thinking we could give in her name an award to an independent journalist each year, and in her honor. So with that, that's a proposal that the church will consider. Okay, so then now to the questions and answers. Are there anybody here or online who has an immediate question? You should speak into the microphone. Oh, you want to go
Doesn't
first?
matter. It doesn't matter. Just so moved. I'm a psychotherapist also, and my son and his kids are in Jerusalem, and they're being brought up to hate Arabs. And I did alternatives to violence in Palestine and the West Bank. We couldn't go into Gaza. So I'm looking for support, which comes in community. So just give me your info so we can bond together and
Very
see
happy to.
how to move forward. And this has been and thank you, beautiful for you. Are you involved also in some of this? Yeah, it's just so moving. So I'm just.
I drag her along.
Yeah. I just didn't realize that it would be such a moving and supportive and beautiful situation. So thank you so much. I'm
You're
very,
welcome.
very grateful. And
I remember you mentioned something about how you can't make a change unless you do it with other people. And I was thinking, I've been thinking about this for a while. Like, I'm so convinced that we should be able to do anything we want as long as you don't hurt anybody. But I can't get anybody to join with me on that. And I don't know if you have any insights about that. I don't really see what the problem is. I mean, I don't know. We don't always know the consequences of our actions, and that has to be taken into consideration. But I don't see what the problem is if nobody's getting hurt.
I guess something to keep in mind is we never know what is in someone else's mind. I'm wearing a button that says every soul, every life, a universe. And that universe is sort of partly what we see, but also what's inside. And knowing others' motivations, that's important. It can be really hard to have empathy and compassion when you don't know someone else's story. One of the lovely things I love about being a therapist is I get to hear so many amazing stories. And I know that's only the tip of what any one person's experience is. I mean, I wish, if my grandfather hadn't died 25 years before me, I might have gotten to ask him some questions. And if my mother had lived long enough past my college years, I might have definitely asked her a lot more questions, had the opportunity. So I think the other thing to keep in mind, there used to be a little bumper sticker. It was practice random acts of kindness. I forget the other half. And acts of beauty, something like that. And random acts of beauty. Yes, that's right. So if you want to be doing something, and it isn't hurting someone else, sure. But note who's around you and how they're going to perceive whatever you do. That can be challenging. Believe me, one of the things I have to counteract in my own self in observing what I've observed in the last 15 months is a lot of rage. But it's I guess it's righteous rage, but I'm not going to act on rage. I can't act on that, but I have to channel that into my artwork and so if we're feeling angry, find some way for yourself to channel it and then go out and do the good works, I guess. I hope that helps.
I never thought about, we don't really know what's in somebody else's mind, but, the issue, the point is, if the other person doesn't feel like they're being hurt at all, if the other person can't show how they're being hurt at all, then I feel like there should be a way to move forward with the issue. Because it just seems like if they're not being hurt at all, there might be some fear involved about what might hurt or something like that, and that would be talked about, it'd be brought out, the possibility of harm in some way. Because I think harm, is really something that could be talked about in a real deep way and in a lot of different ways. Like, for instance, if somebody's wasting your time, they're hurting you. And then you have to decide, well, what's really wasting your time, But
always
it's
good
a
to
good
say-
way to get dialogue going and really get to
Yes.
know the other person.
Yes, dialogue, and if you don't have the time, just say, I wish I had the time, and it was really interesting to meet you, and now I have to go. I think someone has one more question behind you there.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Ed Pazanis.
A little closer to your.
Oh, I'm Ed Pasnese. I'm a member of the church, and I'm on the board. I've been a member 20 years. Thank you for your messages. Had
You're
to be
welcome.
heard. Painful and joyful. So thank you. The message has to be heard more than here today.
Well, let's hope a lot of people tune into the YouTube later.
We have a couple of people participating by Zoom. Tilly, unmute yourself and ask a question, please. Oh, okay. Is Jose? I saw his hand up.
Are there any questions in the chat?
Well, while we get through this awkward moment, I just wanted to say one thing. The expression "an eye for an eye," as brutal as it sounds, is also an admonition against excessive punishment. No more than an eye for an eye, and that comes into play. So no other questions. Oh.
Hi, my name is Charlie. Thank you for the presentation. So, I've been in a relationship with someone, a Jewish girl, who is pretty adamantly liberal Zionist, as I've heard you describe. And I find myself struggling with anger and finding compassion for her because she's someone I care about very deeply, and I wonder how you personally might come to have compassion for someone you're close with who you disagree with on such a deep level, without harboring resentment and anger and lashing out. Because I mean, that's why I came here today, is to hear your story, and I appreciated that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
It is challenging. I've also had clients who were, I guess you could say, liberal Zionist, who had said to me, you know, I would love that for young Israeli children and young Palestinian children to get along. But this is a person who had done birthright trips, and I could see how both her Jewishness and her Judaism were very close to her heart. And, you know, perhaps something I can suggest in terms of the, you know, an individual intimate partner relationship. Sorry, it's weird to like be talking to you and not seeing you. I'll try to move over here. Asking her what it really means for her. What is the meaning of this place called Israel? You know, there's an emotional connection. So, and where does that come from? What's her history with understanding what Zionism might have been in her family? That sense of, oh, well, you know, so my cousins, for example, will say, but, you know, the Jews once had a nation, so, you know, as a people, as a tribe, right? But nations didn't quite exist in quite the same way then as they do now. Borders used to be a lot more fluid. And the other thing with diaspora is that, you know, human beings by nature move across the globe, and they, you know, they intermix, and, you know, our DNA is mixed of all kinds of things. And can also, I would say, find some literature where you could read through it together and explore Palestinian history, explore Jewish history, but from a non-Zionist lens. And actually, there are some wonderful expat Israeli authors. For example, Linda Dittmar and her book, Tracing Homelands. Bloodlines by Maytal Yaniv, amazing book. It's very poetic. She was the daughter of a decorated Israeli colonel, granddaughter of others who were in the IOF. And, well, actually, she's a they now. Excuse my mispronouncing their pronouns. And they are genderqueer. But Bloodlines is an amazing book and has, from the first so many months of this last war, the lists of all the people killed. But they ask a lot of good questions. And you can also find podcasts with interviews with Maytal. Very poignant. Other people to listen to would be Hadar Cohen, who is an Arab Jew whose family had always lived in Palestine and was happy to be in Palestine. And Yuval Mans is someone I follow on Instagram, and you can find a podcast with him and Hadar talking about their experience. There are other things that I've read that are relating to the psychology profession and what happens to children in the prison system. I wouldn't say start there. It's very difficult to read and would just give you a lot of rage. So really start where it's, these expats who are talking about what Israel used to mean for them and what it means now. So I hope that helps. Yeah. Any other questions? Well, if questions show up later on, I'm happy to have Dean give out my contact info, and people can email me and, or find me, well, don't find me on Instagram. No. I don't want to have discussions on Instagram. But yeah, I'm happy to talk with anyone about my perspective. I will say, for me personally, for my liberal Zionist cousin, I've had to sort of take some time away because I was getting too angry. So sometimes we have to impose a boundary on ourselves, if and give it time. It's hard. I can't say it's not hard. It is hard. But thank you all for these great questions. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Okay, with that, we'll close the program and roll out the food.
Recording stopped.